Well, thank you, Alistair, for that. I don't know whether I'm going to cheer you up, but let me have a go. But I just want to take you back to 2.5 years ago when we were in Glasgow. And the world was facing very many challenges and countries had many differences, but we did manage to come together and forge the Glasgow Climate Pact amongst almost 200 countries. And I think the reason that countries did this is because, firstly, they understood it was in their collective self-interest. They saw the impact of climate on infrastructure, lives, livelihoods in their own countries. Secondly, I think countries have recognized that climate change doesn't recognize borders. And thirdly, that the cost of inaction is way greater than the cost of taking action now. So kind of what do we get over the line at that point? What did the world agree? Well, we managed to go from less than 30% of the world economy covered by a net zero target to over 90%. We got more finance committed from developed countries to help developing nations. And for the first time in 26 of these annual meetings, we managed to get agreement for countries to phase down the use of coal. And it's pretty remarkable that we didn't get there earlier, given that 75% of all global emissions are energy related. And the International Energy Agency did a sort of tot-up of all the commitments and said that if they're all delivered, and this is the big if they're all delivered, we're heading towards a 1.8 degree world. Now, right now, we're at 1.2 degrees global warming above pre-industrial levels. And I think, in this country, across Europe, across the world, people can see exactly what that means. So 1.8, I'm afraid, is going to be a terrible outcome for millions of people. But nevertheless, and this is the positive bit, is that we have managed to bend the curve downwards in terms of temperature. So before the Paris Agreement came into force, the scientists were telling us we were heading towards 4 degrees, post-Paris 3 degrees, and post-Glasgow less than 2 degrees. But it's still a pretty terrible outcome, and that's why I've always said that what we got over the line at Glasgow was a fragile win. We went through COP27, COP28. The world agreed to transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems, and actually, if this actually is delivered, I do think it spells the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era. But I mean, those are the commitments, and of course it's challenging to get countries to make commitments. The other is, how do you get them to actually deliver? So what is the state of the planet right now? Well, I don't need to tell you that last year was the hottest year on record. This year, I think it's heading towards the hottest year on record. We breached the 1.5 degree limit temporarily for the first time in 12 months. And frankly, unless countries are prepared to act and basically cut emissions by over 40% over the next few years up to 2030, we're going to crash through the limits that we have set for ourselves. Now, again, the sort of positive bit in all of this is that there has been some progress in terms of green transition. So you are seeing progress when it comes to electric vehicles, clean energy. But frankly, a lot more needs to be done. And I think one of the questions is, what do governments and businesses need to do? Well, very practically, countries need to be doing a lot more in terms of investing in their grids to allow renewables to be connected. We need to make sure that we've got planning regulations which are being speeded up. We need to make sure that people are being trained up for the jobs that are needed in the green transition and in the green economy. And really importantly, we need to make sure that the private sector and governments together are incentivizing people to take new infrastructure near them. And this is one of the sort of big issues that is faced in many countries. And the final piece on this is on finance. We just need to get a lot more finance flowing. So I think in conclusion, what I would say is that world leaders are facing very many challenges out there. We've heard about the ongoing war in Ukraine. We've got conflict still in the Middle East. We've got trade tariffs coming in between the West and China. All of that leaders are having to think about. We've also, as we've discussed over today, have had elections taking place, more will come, and that is creating its own challenges in terms of the outcomes of those elections. And of course, we've got the US presidential election coming up in a few months. And look, I mean, if Mr. Trump is re-elected, there is a likelihood that he will walk away again from the Paris Agreement. He will take the US away again from the front line of the fight against climate change. And these are issues that certainly in Europe we should be thinking a lot about. How do we react to that if that actually happens? And so for me, I think the challenge for world leaders, for actually all of us here, is that how do we ensure that we're injecting urgency into this debate and actually getting world leaders to treat the global warming as actually a climate emergency, which it actually is.